everyone. Today I'm installing a VMN 2-inch body lift in my Hilux. I've got a 2005 model extra cab 4-wheel drive, but it should be the same for pretty much any model between 2005 and 2015, possibly even some of the later models, as I've been told they use the same chassis. I've been told this kit takes about 5-6 hours to put together, so it's about 5:30 now. We're hoping to be done before midnight tonight, and if we've got a bit of spare time I might even throw on my sliders. And I might do another video a bit later on how I got these bad boys to fit, which are, I don't know if you can see the 285, you probably can't see that, but with no cutting and no lift. Well, no, a little bit of cutting, but no body mount cut and no cutting in the back of the guards, just pulled the mud flaps off. And just to speed up the process a bit, I've called in my brother who's a mechanic and also happens to love doing weekend work for free. And I think I've just heard him pull up outside now, so let's rip in. If you haven't bought your body lift kit yet, I would definitely recommend the VMN kit. Comes with everything you need, so there's no messing around with an eBay job, trying to source different parts from different suppliers or anything. It's just all there, ready to go. First up, you want to take the grill out. There's just 2 clips here and here, and 2 screws, one there and one there next to the headlights. So just use a flathead screwdriver, pop the clips up. And then Phillips head for those 2. Being in 2005, I kind of guessed that a couple of these clips were going to break off, so I just got a packet of Toyota replacement clips off eBay for like $15 or something. And there's also 2 more screws. There's one just in there with a bolt in behind the back, and the same on the other side. And just before we get into any of the next steps, we'll just disconnect the negative terminal of the battery. So I just have a bumper, but if you've got a bull bar, either pull the bull bar off or just disconnect the wiring to it, like fog lights or spotlights if you have any, or a UHF even. Next up is these plastic covers. They've just got 2 clips, top and bottom, and they're on both sides, so just rip them off, otherwise they'll get torn when you're lifting the body. If you have one of these trim removal tools, pretty handy to have to get those clips off, because they're just plastic clips. You lever them out and they're not really reusable, so again, handy to have the Toyota spares, because they usually just break off when you pull them out, unless you're good to get them out. After you pull the inner guards out, they won't actually go back on after your body lift, because all the mounting points are going to be 2 inches further apart. You can buy some thin rubber from like Clark Rubber or somewhere similar and just cut them out yourself. Cut out some 2-inch extended ones to suit. Right, next up you just got to pull this air intake hose off. There's actually a good spot to cut it just down here, so that you can use this joiner that comes with the VMN kit and chuck that in between with the hose clamps. Next up, there should be 4 bolts holding your radiator in, and just be careful not to hit the back of the radiator with the engine fan while it's loose. Chucking the radiator drop brackets in, they're pretty difficult to get in, but you just got to work at it and try and get an Allen key in there through the holes for the radiator bolts. It's definitely pretty tricky to get these radiator drop brackets in, so if you do have anyone to help you, I would recommend that you grab a hand, get one person to hold the radiator and kind of push it back, and the other person to get that bracket in there and try and get your bolt in there and tighten it up. You just got to extend the steering shaft. So got one of these, comes with the kit. That's a genuine Toyota extension for the steering shaft. So in the VMN kit they just supply you with another one and a bit of extra spline to attach in front of the other one. So it's on the driver's side, right up against the firewall. And yeah, basically you just loosen the 2 bolts off, and if you can't pry it apart, just leave it there for now, and when you actually jack the cab up, it'll separate by itself. So after you get your steering yoke out, you can start on the inside and start pulling all your interior trim off.
Just clip one pin down, hold the rest
So to pull your center console out, just put your thumb in underneath this cover in front of the handbrake and lift that up, clips out, and then open your lid, and then you should be able to just grab and lift that up and the whole centerpiece comes out. Just make sure you unscrew the gear knobs first so you can lift that boot up and over the top of your gear sticks. After you pulled your trim out, you can get a socket on the top there to hold that and get someone else to undo it from the bottom to undo the body mount, and you don't need to worry about the back because it's fixed, so you just undo it from the bottom. There's two more mounts under the front just behind the grille.
It's just lifting up over that turbo.
Grab the last two body mounts off from the front. They have locking tabs at the top, so you don't need to secure the top, just undo them from the bottom. Make sure you leave all the bolts in at this stage, just so that everything stays in place when you lift the cab, and we'll pull them out a bit later. On each side at the front there's a spiral section of brake line that you just have to gently pry apart as you lift the body, and you'll need to pry apart a fair bit because you've got to gain about 2 inches there. Just to make it a bit easier for ourselves, we're going to pull the factory side steps off now to get a bit more access for a block of wood and a jack under there to lift one side of the body, and we're going to pull them off later anyway for side steps, so it doesn't really matter. Alright, we're just using the bottle jack that's in the back of the car to do this with a couple of blocks of wood. And just before we start, I'll show you the secret bottle jack technique. So you just grab your drill and you grab your first bit of the jack there, and then you got to power it down. Now before you go off, I just forgot to take the two bolts holding this bumper onto the grill behind here, so just rip them off and then you should be right to go. Just got to check everything constantly as you're going up. Make sure there's no wires or anything. If you've got like a dual battery system in the back or something and you've run wires up into the cab and gone down along the chassis, they'll need to be either extended or you might have enough slack to pull them out. Yeah, just keep checking everything as you go. So for your 6 body mounts, you get 4 bolts that are the same size and then 2 that are just slightly longer. Those 2 slightly longer ones go at the rear body mount, and the other ones will go to the middle and the front body mounts. Getting this last body mount out at the front, we can't actually pull the bolt out because the only hole to get it out through is where the washer bottle comes up through, so we're just removing the washer bottle now to have a space to pull that bolt out and get the new even longer one through. So you have to reuse the washers because they're captive washers there on the end of the bolts. So to get them out, either put them in a vise and hit the end of the bolt. Well, we don't have a vise at home here, so we're just using a socket that's too big for the end of the bolt and just giving it a good whack on the end of the... And she's off. Got to get the washer passed off that spline there that holds it.
Part of this lift is you got to check this hose here coming off the power steering, the vacuum line. When you look down there, you can see it's come off a little bit. In this case, sometimes it can come completely off depending on how high you jack it up. So to resurrect that, just under the battery there is the hard metal line. All you got to do is just give that a gentle massage down and then push that hose back into place so it's sitting nice. Got to trim this air intake hose. If we put a cut right there in the flat spot which goes down towards the turbo side, then you got just make sure you leave enough room on both sides for a hose clamp, and we'll put a joiner in the middle. So it's been a pretty long night. It's about 1:30 in the morning now, but I think we're pretty well there. Things I've done, so intake hose back together and tighten that back up. Nuts on the bottom of all the bolts, all tightened up all the way around. Make sure when you first start out, you just, after you lift the first side, put the nuts back on, just finger tight, lift the next side, and then get all those on finger tight, and don't tighten them up till right at the end. Make sure everything's sitting where it should be. All the mounts, all the body mounts are in the correct place, sitting on the lift blocks.
my bumper as well, it's just being pulled down by the front steel plate behind the bumper. So might have to cut a couple of the plastic tabs off there and make up some kind of new mounts to get it to sit properly, because at the moment it's pulling the bumper down a little bit and creating a gap underneath the headlights. If you had to pull the washer bottle out like I did, make sure before you put that back in, you tighten up that body mount in particular, because it's really difficult to get a spanner or a socket in there if your washer bottle's still in place. Do your radiator drop brackets up. My body lift kit came with a coolant bottle relocation, but I didn't end up using it because I couldn't really get it to sit in the right spot. And when I did put it in, my coolant overflow bottle was sitting hard up against the airbox, which I don't really want because it'll just rattle. So I didn't end up using that at all. I'm just going to go over again, make sure everything's tightened up, double check everything, because yeah, you want to make sure all your bolts to do with steering and everything are all done up. That was a huge night, but she's all done. Most important thing obviously is that it's heaps bigger than Dad's Ranger. So yeah, got the sliders on, had a spare couple of hours. I think it's about, what is it, 3:30 in the morning. So yeah, I'm off to bed. A bit of before and after. Just standing next to the door, you can see the door comes up to just below my shoulder. So with the 2-inch body lift, it should be probably up around the top of my shoulder somewhere. I've already got 33s or 285s and about 2.5-inch suspension. A couple of main reasons why you would want a body lift would be increased clearance from hub to guard. So I've now got about 600 mil from the center of hub to the bottom of my guard. It gives you much more room to work with in terms of up travel and suspension. So where even just driving on a normal road, if I turned hard and hit a bit of a bump on one side, my tires would actually scrub on the inside of the guard. So now I've got 2 inches more room that can be had in travel up and down. Some other reasons to body lift would be increased clearance under your sills. So I actually now have 500 mil from the ground to the door sill, just slightly less than that from the ground to the chassis rails. The only place you're not going to gain clearance obviously is to the diff centers. The only way to gain clearance there is larger tyres, which I have done already, which is why I've gone the body lift next. Actually a pretty easy job. You don't really need many tools. You need a set of sockets, set of spanners, a hammer. I would definitely recommend someone to help you. You need a jack, probably a few blocks of wood. A drill will make it easier, and so will a trim removal tool if you have one, but you don't need one. And just a flat and a Phillips head screwdriver, and that's pretty much all you'll need to do the entire job. But it is just a pretty long process, and a lot of bolts to undo, a lot of trim to remove and put back on, and it's mainly just checking everything at the end as well. Things to watch out for, I would say definitely check on your steering shaft spline that you have both of those bolts all the way out. Otherwise, when you do lift the cab up off the chassis, it will most likely strip the threads on the spline, and then you're in trouble. So one other thing I didn't mention was when you're undoing the body mount bolts, you don't need to hold the top, because there is that captive washer there with tabs on the side of it that will hold it in place. But when you're tightening them back up, because you've just slipped the washer back over it, they're not captive anymore. So you actually will have to get a socket or a spanner on top and hold them in place while you're tightening it. They're pretty straightforward. You can get a socket on top of all of them except for the front left. That one was the only one we had trouble with, just because it's got the washer bottle there. So I would definitely recommend taking out the washer bottle. It makes it a lot easier. I actually don't think it would have been possible to do without taking the washer bottle out. And with your lift blocks, so just to be clear, you do not remove the body mounts. They are reused. Your lift blocks sit on top of the body mounts. Well, that's all I got for now, so see you next time.